Let's talk about 1973, because in 1973, something truly strange was happening in America's skies. I mean, from the industrial Midwest all the way to the Deep South, thousands of ordinary people were reporting these unexplainable lights and objects. And look, this wasn't just a few isolated incidents. Oh no, this was a nationwide wave, one of the most intense and flat-out baffling UFO events of the entire 20th century. Okay, so let's dive into this. To really wrap our heads around the scale of what happened, we've got to start with this question right here. You see, these sightings didn't just pop up out of nowhere. There was this unique cultural current running through the country, a whole national mood that had people, well, primed and ready to believe in something extraordinary. So, the early 70s. What a fascinating time. The high from the moon landing was still fresh in everyone's minds, so space travel was a huge deal, feeling this public obsession with what's out there. But at the same time, this was the era of Watergate and the Pentagon Papers. It was a time of really deep-seated mistrust in official institutions. And this mix, it created the perfect storm. You had a population looking up at the stars for answers, and they were less willing than ever before to just accept simple government-issued explanations. And this wave, it just built and built over several months. It really kicked off in the summer of '73 with a whole cluster of sightings over the Midwest. But then in October, things just exploded. The Pascagoula abduction case down in Mississippi became a massive media sensation, and then, just a week after that, an entire Army helicopter crew had a terrifyingly close encounter over Ohio. By the end of October, the entire country was absolutely gripped. Now, while sightings were happening pretty much everywhere, the American Southeast became the undeniable epicenter of this whole flap in late October. The sheer volume and, honestly, the intensity of the reports coming out of states like Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida were, well, they were simply staggering. We're talking local police departments just completely overwhelmed with calls. What's so striking when you look back is the consistency in what people were describing. Night after night, the reports all shared these common themes. Silent, metallic objects that could just hang motionless in the air before accelerating to impossible speeds. Witnesses again and again mentioned these bright, pulsating lights and the profound, unforgettable emotional impact. This powerful mix of awe and just paralyzing fear. Beyond the objects themselves, this story is really about the people who saw them. Their credibility and their incredibly compelling accounts are what turned a series of strange lights into a defining historical event. And perhaps no story captured the nation's attention more than this one. Two shipyard workers fishing on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. Their names were Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, and they claimed they were taken aboard a craft by these strange, robotic-looking creatures. Their story was sensational, for sure, but what gave it real weight was what happened next. The local sheriff, who was skeptical at first, he left the two men alone in a room with a hidden tape recorder. He was probably expecting to catch them laughing about a hoax, right? Instead, he recorded them speaking in genuinely terrified tones about their experience. And later, they both passed polygraph tests. That's the kind of tangible thing that made their story incredibly difficult to just dismiss. But this wave wasn't just about civilian encounters. It was really defined by the number of trained observers who came forward. And the most famous case, it involved Captain Lawrence Coyne and his three-man crew in a U.S. Army Reserve helicopter. A testimony like Coyne's? That was a total game changer. During a routine flight, he and his crew reported a near collision with a silent, cigar-shaped craft. It bathed their helicopter in this green light and caused all their instruments to go haywire. I mean, when a decorated Army pilot and his entire crew file a detailed report like that, it just lends a seriousness to the phenomenon that you simply can't ignore. So, with these kinds of powerful, credible stories hitting the news, the entire country was plunged into a frenzy. And this set the stage for this fascinating clash between widespread public fascination and a cautious and, let's be honest, often dismissive official response. You can really see the tension here, can't you? On one side, you had the public, just absolutely captivated. A real grassroots enthusiasm took hold as eyewitness accounts just flooded local newsrooms and police stations. But on the other side was the official response. Now remember, Project Blue Book had been shut down years earlier. So the Air Force and other authorities, they were often skeptical, frequently blaming sightings on weather or misidentified planes. And this left a lot of witnesses feeling ignored, or even worse, ridiculed. And caught right in the middle of it all was the media, which played this really complex and powerful role. It absolutely amplified the stories, no question. It took these local reports and wove them into a national conversation. The problem was that coverage often veered into pure sensationalism, which helped shape public perception and kind of framed the entire debate as this simple binary. Either you were a believer or you were a skeptic, with very little room for any kind of nuance in between. So, after the wave of sightings finally died down, what was left? Why, all these decades later, does the great UFO wave of 1973 remain such a huge cultural and historical touchstone? Let's take a look at its lasting impact. The 1973 wave left a profound mark. First, it showed the incredible scale a UFO event could reach, captivating an entire nation for months. But crucially, the high number of credible witnesses, we're talking police and military, it prompted a new level of seriousness among civilian research groups. It became a benchmark case in UFO history, really a textbook example of a phenomenon that couldn't just be easily explained away. And now, more than a half a century later, the story still holds this incredible power. The questions that were raised back in 1973 are in so many ways the very same questions we are still asking today. It's just a powerful testament to how a series of strange, unexplained events can embed themselves so deeply into our collective imagination. So ultimately, the story leaves us with this question, because beyond the debate of what exactly was in the sky, the events of 1973 force us to look at ourselves. They reveal so much about the nature of belief, the power of a shared experience, and that deeply human, enduring search for answers when we look up at the great, unknown expanse above us.